Done anything on economics proper in a while, and I guess part of it is people rather tell you what to think than ask a professional, and when they ask a professional or pay a professional, they still decide that it's better to just tell you. So I'm going to leave the comments open so you don't have to listen to me, and you can just call me a scumbag because you disagree. That's a much better idea than educating yourself or listening to a theory. So I highly encourage not only to be called a scumbag, but don't retort any facts or points. Please don't. And no, I'm not at all bitter about recent contracts that have affected me. But so there's my happy intro. But so what I was going to get on about with my disclaimer out of the way is the default in Puerto Rico. They basically just said we're not paying, we're broke, and we can't pay, and we're not going to pay, and we're not going to take money on other things to attempt to pay our debts. Well, they've had a pretty sweet deal, and I guess anybody following it knows that they've had a pretty sweet deal. And unfortunately, they've had an influx of capital, which is not recently, but over the years, caused them to make it cheaper to outsource and import over and over, and it's crippled their industry. For a while there, they were the largest drug manufacturer in the world. One of them, actually. I don't want to say number one, but a higher. They've had booming industries, they had a lot of things going together, and it's just kind of been cheaper to not do anything. It's one of those scenarios. There's a lot of things with the influx of capital can be quite damaging to an economy if it's not managed right, and some will even argue that it is never a safe thing to do externally. But, I just try to lay the broad picture, not really get into schools of thought or which is right or wrong or what I think. But, so basically their industry has been dying out. One of the only things they really do have, actually, is the Bacardi family, which is, I don't know if they're even still doing most of their manufacturing there. I know they have places elsewhere. But that's one of their largest, and I don't even drink Bacardi, so it's not like I have much of a stake there. But the reason why this is a national, if not international, affair is the United States has been funneling money through states and all sorts of neat little tricks they have from bonds to get them funds, and backing their bonds through, obviously, their funds that are incoming as a repayment of their debt and investments. Well, a lot of those have been tied into long-standing things, Social Security and 401ks, because they were a safe, sturdy government bond. Now, obviously, when they don't pay out, the safety and security, and the reason why lots of people go for long-term for bonds and government bonds especially, is now kind of the rug is pulled out from under them. It'll definitely affect their credit rating, even if not through an agency. People are going to be able to see that. That's something that is another thing that I think a lot of people get lost on, is when you go through large bond issues or large anything, people think a little bit more than the numbers. It's not like approving you or I for a Visa card. Yes, you may have good credit, yes, you may have this or that, but we're going to look a little bit into the bigger picture. I mean, we do that even with smaller business loans, larger business loans. It's not the same thing as handing you out a Capital One card or whatever. And, it's something that's a little trickier to prove on paper, so to speak, but it does happen, it does take an effect. So that may have something, the fact they're not paying is, well, bad. Needless to say, you really shouldn't take a debt if you don't plan on paying it or can't pay it. Better yet is just don't get yourself into nasty debts, but that's another rant. As far as overall how much and how quickly it will affect here, I don't think anything short-term. Long-term, it's going to really depend on how they act and what comes of it, how much debt forgiveness is given, if any. It's probably going to be a chunk of forgiveness, some restructuring. It'll probably slow stunt growth on some of the bonds. Things that are coming up on maturity should be the first to be paid out, obviously, because that's how old, beautiful Ponzi schemes work. But I don't really see too much of a shakeup. Obviously, there's going to be, the market's going to be hissy, rightfully so. Everybody who's an investor is going to think about this thing, but I don't really see any sort of world-ending collapse, any of that good stuff. really is going to depend a lot on their populace too, about how their government is going to be able to stay in after defaulting, if they care or not. But they have a pretty sweet deal, and many, myself included, will say it's not a very fair deal for the rest of United States citizens. So we will see where it's coming from, but that's kind of the beauty of this line of work, is it's a lot of guesswork, and you can be right, you can be wrong, but people are going to tell you they're wrong anyway, regardless of how much research you've done. And since I like to do these off the cusp, and when I get back from a run, I'm not really going to cite anything or source anything. Maybe if I kind of focus on doing things a little more in depth, I'll get into that stuff, but pretty much anything I've said is common knowledge on a 101 level as well, so I'm not getting too in depth, and I'm not making any sort of claims that are very hard to back up. So, I don't want to be intellectually dishonest, but at the same time I'm saying that I'm not going too far into the intellectual level, so I just want to say I try to keep my honesty level up there, but I've spent most of this video complaining instead of doing anything, so I'm going to put this one now.